Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Bob Unger Show. And we are very honored and privileged today to have as our guest a man of principle. That's about as unusual today than as an honest politician. A man of principle, very unusual. And his name is Dr. Daniel Thomas. And he is a medical doctor, and he's also a Christian man, and he's also part of the Love March movement. So tell us a little bit about your background, how you got involved in this cause of opposition to shoving this perversion down everyone's throat. And what was it that created this change in you, or did you always have this movement within you, or is this something that developed? So give us a little bit of background.
Right. So thank you so much for having me. You know, it's definitely an honor to be able to stand to represent truth and represent family, and that's really what I really believe. You know, is missing a lot in the world, and certainly in Jamaica. The Love March movement, we are here to stand for that truth, for sexual purity and for family. So I myself, I've been a Christian for, pretty much all my life. Probably gave my life to the Lord when I was about 7 years old, got baptized at 12 years old, and really got set on fire for the Lord at that age as well. And when I was in my university years, you know, there were some moves and the US government and other persons were pressuring our government to pass certain laws and repeal certain laws related to homosexuality. Well, actually related to anal penetration, right? And I was uncomfortable with the direction it seemed that the nation was going. And so I banded together with a number of other young people who were also in university, and we started the Love March movement in 2012. Which is now a registered non-governmental organization. We're a youth Christian NGO that stands for sexual purity and the family. And so we do two things, advocacy and ministry. The ministry, we would be invited to schools, churches, and camps to speak about how to stay virgin until marriage, how to break an addiction to pornography, and you know, how to date as a Christian, things like that. And any topic related to sexual purity. Right. And then on the advocacy side, which we're much more known for because, you know, that's loud and that's out there kind of in your face. We have letters to the editor. We have, we do interviews, TV, radio, you know, such as, you know, interviews like this as well. And where necessary, we protest. And that protest action looks somewhat like what went viral on our Independence Day here in Jamaica, which was August 6th, where the American Embassy in Kingston, Jamaica, flew the rainbow LGBT flag, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender flag. And, you know, we considered it an insult. And so we protested in defense of national sovereignty and in defense of truth. And, you know, we're grateful to the Lord that video that our local news company covered, it went viral, and we continue to stand on those same principles.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that the flood of Noah, which is in the Bible, ends with a rainbow. And yet they take that and use that as the symbol, not of God, but of the opposite of God's design. Now that has got to be intentional. What is your view on that?
It's so interesting that you raised the biblical origins of the rainbow. You know, the most popular part of scripture with respect to the rainbow would definitely be Noah. And my take on Noah's situation and the rainbow being there at the end is that God promised, I'm not going to flood the earth again, right? But it literally means that the next time won't be a flood, it will be fire. You know, so I find it quite interesting that the LGBT community uses that symbol, which is really saying when the next judgment won't be with water, will be with fire. And then the other thing that kind of came up was I've been actually following FAI. I don't know if you know Frontier Alliance International. They've been doing a Bible study on Revelations, and they've covered some of the stuff happening in Afghanistan as well, right? Because they're there on the ground. And, you know, Joel Richardson was looking at the rainbow in Revelation. Actually, you know, the mighty angel and part of the throne of God has a rainbow on it. And so it is really something so holy. You know, I don't think I understood it that clearly before. It is something so holy and so precious to God that he would put it as part of the centerpiece of heaven on the throne. And you know, the LGBT community, and especially the advocates, I should say, and not necessarily the community, because there's a difference between the community and the advocates. The advocates have taken this symbol of something which is so holy and precious and have perverted it and used it to be a symbol of some serious evil. And, you know, as Christians, we have to stand up and defend that which is holy and defend the truth.
Well, people call those who are like you and I, they call us extremists. But I always answer them by saying that Noah was also called a conspiracy theorist and an extremist. And then it rained.
There you go. Definitely. And I mean, it's crazy how you can stand and represent a viewpoint that has been around for thousands of years, literally millennia, and then be called an extremist and be called all these different names, as though this understanding of sexuality just suddenly developed. You know, it has become strange to actually represent a position that has been there for so long, and it's so popular. Everyone knows, as Christians, we hold to a certain standard in terms of sexual ethics, and you know, that's no secret. But in certain countries right now, you cannot even read those scriptures in the Bible. You will get in trouble by you know, at the hands of the authorities. So things are going a particular direction. But we have said in Jamaica, we're looking at these international trends, and we don't want to be a part of the wave of madness going on. We want to defend our nation. We want to stand for truth.
Well, the first man to get that message that you just gave out and called Christian, which it is at this point, but it was actually a Jew named Moses who was given that instruction at Mount Sinai. And the Jews then spread that to the rest of the world.
Definitely.
It's actually a Jewish concept.
Yeah.
You may not know this, but there's something called a midrash, midrash, which is a commentary on the Bible written by rabbis something like 1,800 years ago, approximately. And it says in the midrash that relates to Noah that the reason why the straw that broke the camel's back when God decided to flood the earth was when the judges of that time allowed a ketubah, a Jewish marriage contract between men.
Really? Wow.
The commentary.
Wow. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. And I'm not a biblical scholar, but I have learned this from people who are indeed biblical scholars. So all people that come from the Judeo-Christian ethos, which is what inspired America, what inspired the Declaration of Independence, what inspired all our rights, because our rights don't come from the government, they come from God, because God created us, not the government. But they've reversed it now, and now they act as if the government created us. And people like yourself who stand up are going to be attacked as extremists. And I always tell the liberals that, yes, I am an extremist. I want my wife to be extremely faithful and loyal. You want your wife to commit adultery 3 times a week, moderately faithful. I'm extreme faithful. They want to be moderately faithful. And that literally is what goes on in a lot of liberal homes. So, you know, they need to be face down by people who have a spine, by people who are not jellyfish. And they are trying to pervert the Black churches. And they've succeeded to a large degree in America with people like Al Sharpton, who I'm sure you've heard of him, no?
Yeah.
Jesse Jackson. These are people who are supposed to be preaching the gospel, and they're preaching nothing but sodomy. I heard them talk the other day. Oh, the LGBT and the homophobic, this is garbage. There are certain words that they can intimidate people with, not me, but they can intimidate a lot of people. They call me a racist. They call me a homophobe. First of all, the word homophobe is ridiculous because phobia means an irrational fear of homosexuals. I don't have any irrational fear. I just do not and will never accept their ideology and their lifestyle as normal. Never. I'd rather be dead. No problem. And
exactly.
You feel the same.
Definitely. I think it's so important that as the West, that we remember where our institutions have come from. The origins and the founding fathers in the United States, seem to just have so many things spot on in terms of where the direction that they wanted America to go and the freedoms that were going to be protected and things like the institution of marriage, marriage, which is from Genesis 2, that marriage dates back so far. And so one can understand how the Lord could be upset when something which is so holy and so central is now transformed into something to be a stamp of approval to evil, right? To all kinds of evil behavior and made out to be nothing, made out to be perverted. And so I can definitely understand that situation in that you're referring to earlier in the Midrash, right? But it's so important that we remember who we are as a people. And that's what we want to do in Jamaica. We are not as old as the United States, right? So when those that crafted our documents at independence, when they wrote our national anthem, what's in the anthem is, Eternal Father, bless our land, guard us with thy mighty hand, keep us free from evil powers, be our light through countless hours. So you can see all the scriptures that kind of ties into. And the biblical roots, we have national heroes who were Christians who died for justice, died standing up for truth and justice. So that's the kind of heritage that we have. And it's not far in the past, you understand? Almost 60 years. So we are trying to hold to that. And we don't want the US government or any government to force us in any direction that we as a democratic nation are not interested in. We're a sovereign nation. And so this entire protest was really about making that statement bold and brazen and very clear. Stop cultural imperialism. We want to hold to truth. We want to defend marriage. We don't want to pervert marriage. And we will continue to make that stand.
Well, God bless you for that. God bless you indeed. Tell me a little bit about Jamaica in terms of how far into the population has this perversion gone in terms of what they're teaching in schools, in terms of the churches, in terms of the Jamaican people? What percentage are more in your corner and what percentage are in the corner of evil? Give us a little breakdown, approximately.
Okay, so our schools, God has been so gracious to us. Our schools are actually majority church run, right? So the way our school system came about was that we had Christians early on out decided that they wanted to help to teach our children. And so many of our schools are attached to churches. And I think that is one of the main reasons why there is very little impact of the LGBT agenda in our schools. In 2012, there was an effort to sneak in particular material, but the parents were outraged. The parents spoke up, and it was just an embarrassment on the Minister of Education at the time. For example, they had things for grade 7 students. You guys have grade 7? Yeah, grade 7 students who would be about 11 years old, asking them in their classrooms to think about questions like, how do you know you're not a homosexual? How do you know you don't like anal penetration? Maybe if you tried it, would you probably be a homosexual? Asking 11-year-olds those questions. It was an outrage. And then in 2016, there was another undercover effort in our children's homes with similar questions. And again, it was brought to the attention of the media, and it had to be withdrawn, and different persons lost their jobs. You understand? So the majority of our nation is definitely still on the path of truth. In Jamaica, we have something called the law against buggery, or the anti-sodomy law, right? That law actually speaks to anal penetration between men and men, as well as males and females, right? As well as males and animals. So it's just, altogether what falls on the category of sodomy or buggery. And that is, from our perspective, the law that is actually holding back the LGBT agenda. Because if you look at the United States and the UK and other nations, there is a trajectory from the removal of that law towards same-sex marriage, towards civil unions, towards anti-discrimination legislation, and towards same-sex marriage. And so we've been defending that law. The Bill Johnson poll, I think it was about 2 years ago, had over 90% of Jamaicans supporting that law, the retention of that law. So you can see from that statistic that, the vast majority of Jamaicans have been seeing what's happening abroad and have decided that we don't want to go that way as a nation. But at the same time, we have significant efforts by LGBT advocates locally who are ebbing away at certain things and have really come out very bold over the last 5 years with certain goals. So we continue to respect their opinion, but just disagree and oppose the direction that they want to take the country as well.
Do you have children of your own?
I actually have one son.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's 9 months old.
And 9 months. Okay, so he's not going to school.
Right.
How do parents who think like you deal with their kids on this issue? Because unfortunately, it's very hard to avoid it because they're in your face so much. And so the issue can come up. And I'm sure you have conversations with your friends and family members about this, because you see it on TV. I don't know about Jamaican TV, but I can tell you on American TV, it's like being on a sewer. It's literally a sewer. Every commercial, every show, and something you may want to know. I believe it was 1984, but it was in the 80s. There was a book, and the book was called After the Ball: How We Will Mainstream Homosexuality in America. And it was written by two very intelligent homosexuals. These are not stupid people. And one was a Madison Avenue executive, and I think the other was a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And in their book, if you read the book, they lay out their whole game plan of exactly what they're going to do to destroy you. And they have followed that game plan perfectly. They have accomplished everything. They said they would have homosexual characters in every TV show, in every commercial, in all the media, constantly inundating you to the point. I went to the bank the other day, and they had behind the bank tellers, they had like a TV or a movie screen with all advertisements in Chase Manhattan Bank promoting this perversion. And I said to the manager, who had a crucifix around her neck, because she was a Black woman, and I said to her, why are you promoting this in a bank? What does this have to do with bank? I don't come here for this garbage. I come here to do banking business. So she said to me, a typical cliche, I am a Christian, and those who are without sin should throw the first stone. And I said, well, I got news for you. Jesus said, sin no more. So I'm Jewish, and I know that. And she's touting this nonsense. Jesus said that it was a positive thing. But
exactly.
Here's a woman with a crucifix. So when I see that, I say, what are the churches doing? What are they teaching? Who are these people? Don't they educate the people? You're supposed to be a teacher when you're a preacher. And the word rabbi in Hebrew means teacher.
Exactly.
So how do you address that?
Well, the churches, by and large, are probably I would say 90% of the churches are still standing against the LGBT agenda. There are probably there are a few denominations that have recently gone strange in their positions. I'll leave it at that. So the vast majority, especially the evangelical churches, right?
Yeah.
Understand. In terms of parents, parents have certainly come under increased pressure. As you're saying, the TV has been overrun by the LGBT agenda. The document that I'm aware of as well that would relate to After the Ball is the overhauling of straight America and the different steps, right? Probably it was a synopsis of that book that you referred to earlier. It has definitely come into full effect. And so it has become very important for parents to spend the time to explain to children the biblical sexual ethics, right? Before they get in touch with all this strange information. We're grateful that it's not in the schools yet, but I have heard of cases where because of cable TV and popular culture, because we have a saying in Jamaica that if America has a cold, but if America sneezes, Jamaica will catch a cold, right?
Right.
So we are downstream to American culture, and so it's coming at our children many times through YouTube, through the cartoons, etc. And so parents have to be that much more vigilant to really teach our Christian, in the context of Christian families and Christian homes, to teach our children how to judge different ideas and how to determine what is true and what is false, and not just to accept everything, but to test the ideas and to see how it lines up against the word of God. So parents have definitely been having to do that more and more. And, it will be a constant battle, and it will be an uphill battle until there's some kind of implosion, because I'm counting on the implosion of this entire system of thinking. Sometimes this is signs of it falling on itself. For example, the trans advocates going up against the feminists, the lesbian feminists. There have been some internal clashes there because the systems of thinking just don't make sense. They don't work out in real life. For example, also the transferring of thousands of male chromosomally male individuals to female prisons because they claim to be female. Those are examples of the implosion and the ridiculousness of the LGBT agenda in its finality. So we're hoping that the other countries in the Caribbean, not just Jamaica, will continue to observe these different things and recognize that we really need to stand and we need to just be logical and clear that what we're standing for is truth, age-old truth regarding marriage, regarding family, and regarding sexuality.
Let me ask you another question, because I don't hesitate to get at the truth about everything and ask uncomfortable questions, because people need to ask uncomfortable questions. That's how we. Do you see in Jamaica a lot of anti-white racism the way you see in America?
A lot of anti-white racism.
Yeah, in Jamaican people. No,
I wouldn't say that we are very, the common sentiment about Jamaicans is that we're very friendly with white persons, if we use that term, Caucasians, I think when we see a white person, we more think about tourism and the boosting of the economy. Definitely the Black Lives Matter type anti-white racism has not taken much hold in Jamaica. So I wouldn't say that that is the case at all. I mean, some people have some ideas, and again, whatever is popular in America, it tries to make its way here, but that has not been a popular sentiment locally. No.
It's interesting when I interview Black men on my show, American, and they tell me that at one time they had bought into all that nonsense, Black Lives Matter, and they hated the white man, blah, blah, blah. And I asked them, well, what was it that changed you? And they said, when we learned to love God.
Yeah.
And I find that as a common denominator, because a person, regardless of color, if they're a decent person, they would much rather have a guy like you as their next door neighbor than have a white man who's an evil hater of God. Because
right.
You want your neighbor to be someone who your children can be safe with, that your children are not going to be shown the wrong path. And so if that person is Black or white, it shouldn't matter. What should matter is what are the values? Because you and I have more in common in terms of a value than any difference we have, other than the way we look.
Exactly.
It's an important thing. More important is what you value, what are your values, and how you think, not how you look. Because I see this all the time where you've had cases where men are holding hands with each other, and it's in a 2-family or 3-family house, and they're tenants in the house. And the owner of the house has children, and he doesn't want his children seeing these men who kiss in the street, put their arms around each other. He doesn't want his child to see that. So he wants them out of his house. But if he tries to do that, he'll lose his house these days. They'll take away your property, no problem. And so my whole point is, if the average person, they don't have to be activists like you. Not everybody is going to be active like you. But if they just open their mouths in protest, just open your mouth and say, no, I don't want this. Like those parents who were upset about what the school was trying to teach. We could have prevented all of this. And the same is true with these vaccine and mask mandates. If people had any brains and any spine and said, hey, don't you tell me what medicine I have to take. I make my own decision. And these are the same people when it comes to killing babies who say, oh, my body, my choice, right? What happened to my body, my choice? The hypocrites, man, hypocrites.
It's so ironic. Part of something I've been thinking about as well, the raising of the LGBT flag on the flagpole, it's almost as if there is an LGBT nation, like a whole set of people across the world have that same thinking, their allegiance. I don't know if you saw the thing with the teacher that was teaching children to pledge their allegiance to the rainbow flag, right? That's the kind of thing that is being promoted currently. Everyone having that ideology of evil, okay? And it flies on these very weak but catchy slogans, right? Love wins. You know, all these slogans, like if you look at,
doesn't matter who you love.
Right, yeah, and they don't make any sense. They fail, for example, in this situation, they fail to look at what love is. 1 Corinthians 13 is so clear. It says, love does not rejoice in evil, but rejoices with the truth. You understand? And so there's a lot going on, but persons have decided that they want to be willfully ignorant and they don't want to step on anybody's toes. And so evil has been progressing. But in Jamaica, in the Caribbean, we're saying it should not progress any further. We already have issues. We need no more issues. We want to defend our institutions. We want to defend marriage. We want to protect our children from this trans ideology. It's crazy seeing what's going on in the world, where they're saying that children can get puberty blocking drugs and get sex changes funded by some of them funded by their schools and without parental consent undergo sex changes, and that's not where we want to go as a country.
You see that law case in Texas with the 9-year-old? And the judge ruled that the father isn't allowed to tell his son that he's not a girl. 9 years old.
It's insane. It's completely insane. But that's what happens when you unhinge a nation from its roots. That's what happens when you feel like you can just create things out of thin air. Even if they're not based in scientific, you can just make up stuff. That's the product of that kind of thinking. Yeah.
Well, can you tell our listeners how they can learn more about you and what you're doing, your website, any way for them to keep in touch and follow the story?
Awesome. Well, the Love March movement, we are on Facebook, right? Love March movement on Facebook. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram as well. And you may email lovemarchmovement@gmail.com. Persons may also check out our website, lovemarchmovement.org. Right, so you can see some of the things that we've been up to. I mean, the advocacy with respect to the LGBT agenda is one area of things that we do. We've spoken on, for example, on human trafficking as well, because we've been advocates for stricter penalties, and we've helped with prevention in terms of human trafficking. And we're big on standing for life as well, and we congratulate Texas on the situation there. The laws there that have saved already over 100 babies' lives. We continue to stand in those different areas: pro-life, pro-family, pro-Jesus. We continue to stand.
I am curious, how much average? What is the average price of a decent house in Jamaica? Not a castle, not a palace, but also not a slum.
Right.
And a decent place.
A decent place, you could go to, call it $15, $20 million Jamaican. And the exchange rate is about 150 Jamaican dollars to $1 US. So you would have to do that math. I don't know what it works out in US dollars.
The average American middle class guy who comes down to Jamaica could afford a house there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. I may have to move there. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
I may have to get out of here.
You're welcome to come.
You guys would accept me?
Definitely. In a heartbeat.
All right. Well, if you ever come to America, just call me. Felipe has my number, and you're welcome. I'll take you out to dinner.
Okay, I really appreciate that.
America. So God bless you, and keep up the good fight, because in the end, we're all not going to live forever.
Exactly.
And we don't want to wind up like many people who are not going to need any winter clothing where they're going.
Definitely.
Got that message?
That loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Life is short, but hell is forever.
Exactly. And, I just want to add one more appeal. Believers, we have to be bold unto righteousness, bold. The word of God says the righteous are as bold as a lion, and the wicked flee with nobody pursuing them. This is not time to be cowards. It's not time to be spineless, because we're in end times now. That means that there will be deeper deception, there will be greater darkness, but it is time for us to shine, to play our role in this earth as salt and as light, straight up until the Lord's return, that there will be a glorious bride that will be beautiful and ready for the Lord when he comes, that we won't be ashamed because we stood for truth and we stood for righteousness.
Well, I'm a lawyer, and so when you stand before the Lord for judgment, I will represent you.
All right.
All right. Good to see you. Pleasure.
Yeah, man.
Stay in touch. God bless you. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.